It's the Win Your Podcast 2-year anniversary. To the day today, I started this podcast, and I really still have no idea what I'm doing. I still have so much more to grow. I still have so much more to accomplish, to keep trying. And I think that's the fun thing about this. I didn't think I would be here 2 years later with 200 plus episodes. I mean, this feels really cool to have something that's like numerically this long, you know what I mean? 200 episodes is wild. And I still feel like I'm just getting into the game, you know what I mean? I obviously, I don't have the biggest audience. I don't have the best audio equipment. I don't have like a huge set. I don't have like a crazy design or team behind me to make this podcast. It's just me, my phone, a microphone, a USB microphone. It's not even like a Shure microphone. It's not even like a, one of those fancy dancy, or I guess just regular, but, quite expensive. Audio microphones with one of those condensers and whatnot, so that way the audio sounds great. None of that, all right? It's just me sitting here talking to you, the people. Anybody who will listen really is just, I'm so excited that this is where I am. You know what I mean? It's like whether or not the episodes are good or bad, it's just kind of like I have those episodes out. You know what I mean? And I can always start again. That's the cool thing, is that you can always start again. You can always try again. You can always, just keep letting it flow. Just keep letting it flow. You know what I'm saying? Just keep doing your thing. It doesn't have to be like end all be all this podcast. It's just a way for me to get out ideas and for me to like talk about things that I like. I like talking about movies or TV shows that I've watched and like I have opinions and thoughts about. And sometimes, I don't, I just kind of like regurgitate the plot. You know what I mean? Sometimes I just kind of re-say or restate what I know about the story. You know what I mean? It's not some grand review. It's not some deep, intricate kind of look at it. It's just kind of like, hey, when you're watching it, you know what I mean? Be prepared for some fun. Be prepared for this. Or, there's going to be this thing that happens. It doesn't have to, I don't make it like this huge, deep, introspective look at it. I think there are better YouTube channels for it. I think there are a lot more movie analysis for it. There are a lot, I guess, better reviewers for it. But for me, it's just like, I like watching these movies. I like talking about them. And what better way than weekly to talk about them, And I split, when I first started, I was like, I have no episodes. And I'm so far behind all of the big players. Like, you just think about it. It's like, Joe Rogan's at like over like 1,000 plus right now. And it's just like, you're so far behind that it's like, there's no realistic way to catch up. You know what I mean? Weekly. So I was like, if I do 2 a week, then I'll double the amount. So I was like, okay, so if in 52 weeks, right, in a year, I can double it, then I can get 104 episodes. That was my thought. That was my idea when I first came out with the podcast. I was just like, oh, if I double it, then I'll have 100 episodes, and you know what I mean? I'll be able to do whatever I want, or I'll have like a large enough episodes that you just consistently keep on trying and trying and trying, and you'll just grow and grow and grow more. And where I am now, what I do now, and how I feel about it now is just that, like, that was definitely the right call, because those 2 episodes a week, they really set me up for a lot of success. They set me up for good scheduling and time management. It really is those, as easy as those things, is consistently uploading and knowing for a fact, no matter what, on Thursday, you have to upload an episode for the podcast. You have to talk about something. You got to find something to talk about, and it can be absolutely nothing at all, or it can be something that you just recently went through or feel like talking about, or something that you kind of watched but you didn't watch, and you know what I mean? Just something every single week. And 2 things at that, one of them entertainment and media, and the other one kind of more yourself and kind of like, I don't know, just spouting nonsense, really. There's no better word for it than that. And I just feel really good about what I'm doing now, the situation that I'm kind of speaking, or the things that I talk about now are a lot more, I don't want to say they're amazing, you know what I mean? I just feel like I'm glad that they're something out there, you know what I mean? And for the life of me, whenever there are only a few podcasts that I listen to where I genuinely scroll back down to like the very first episode, or, to like the first the 87th episode, or something at the bottom, like the 40th episode. Like, I usually, if I find a podcast that's cool, I'll go and I'll watch that episode that I found on Instagram or on YouTube, right? Like, I'll be like, oh, they released a new episode with this celebrity or with this person, or what they were talking was pretty interesting here. Let me go take a look at it, right? I very rarely will go scroll all the way down to like the first episode and be like, you know what, let me see it from start to finish all the way through. Like, I don't do that. So, by creating by putting out 2 episodes a week, I was kind of like saying to myself, and making one of them like popular entertainment and media, I was kind of like, if people were looking for something or someone that talks about the movie that they just watched, or if they were looking for somebody who, just maybe like a kid somewhere just kind of was like, oh man, I just watched this movie for the first time. Does anybody talk about it? Who's talking about it? Is there something about it? And yeah, there are a bunch of people to talk about it, but I'm saying maybe if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, I don't know, or Apple Podcasts. I just focused on putting out the episodes twice a week, so that way I can just say I did it and I have it out there, and who knows. But I'm just really, I remember the feeling I had when I made this podcast. It was so, I had planned it for a while, and then I just kind of was like, what am I waiting for? You know what I mean? It's like, now when I see other podcasts, I'm like trying to learn from them and take what I see from them. And it's like, okay, so their setup is just like, they have like multiple camera shots to record different people. These are the kind of microphones they use. They probably have a whole set. They got lighting. They got like a full background. You know what I mean? They have so much more than I have. And it's like, I'm learning from them, but I don't necessarily have their following or their funds or the things to do it. So it's like, but then I was like, I don't really need all that. Like, a podcast has no rules. I don't need some fancy setup. It's definitely nice and it looks good on camera and it makes people click or like make you look professional than somebody just sitting on a chair talking to a camera or, behind their desk or whatever. I'm just 2 years in and there's still like so much growth for me to do. And it's like, to see the progression over the years. I remember like my first episodes, it was all scraggly and messed up because my USB microphone wasn't the way the connection worked. It just wasn't connecting. It was all on the USB microphone. It was having a difficulty connecting to my setup, and I just couldn't, the audio just came out all cracked and messed up. And I could have deleted those episodes and just be like, let me start all over. Let me forget all that. But instead I was like, no, just move on to the next episode. Like, just keep on going. Just keep on going. And I remember feeling like it was such a chore, at the beginning. Like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe, I have to do this thing. And now I look at it as like, no matter what, it's getting up. You know what I mean? Just the routine of it over and over and over again of trying it and coming up with new ideas and being like, did I already talk about that? And scrolling through my whole episodes and realizing that like, man, I have 200 episodes up now, and just, or 100 or 50, and just being like, yeah, I talked about that, or there's something else to talk about, or there's this to do. And I just really enjoy that aspect of looking back and seeing how much I have. And I imagine it's like, you know, like big, I don't know, artists, like musical artists feel about like their music, and like they have so much music, or they have such a great body of work that when they look back on it, they're like very proud of it, and they can attach their emotions and their feelings and everybody who worked with them at the time. Like it just all comes flooding back. And I think that's a really cool thing that I feel about this podcast. It's not, you know, as crazy great as those, but you know, who knows, in time maybe it will. But I'm still in the ground, still in the dirt, still trying to make this, you know, still trying to make this tree grow, this podcast become bigger, because I came up with the hook. I was like, when you're doing anything, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, right? It's like, that was the whole premise of it, is like, I could do anything, or I could talk about anything when you're thinking about this, or when you're doing that, or when you're out and about, when you're driving, when you're sitting down, when you're, you know what I mean? That was the kind of hook. And I got the idea for the hook by watching, you know, TV shows like Friends, right? Because like they have the episodes all kind of follow the same format. It's like the one where such and such does such and such, or the one where apples, right? Like I don't know, but I just kind of like the repetitiveness and like the kind of sureness. I don't know what the right word is. I just like the consistency of like, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, when you're, right? I feel like it all kind of merges together nicely. And I like that, that kind of merging. And then I feel like it's a good tagline. Is it perfect? No, but and since I made this podcast, I've had gimmicks for other podcasts, other ideas for podcasts, to make podcasts. And it's not that I couldn't do them. It's just that like I would need the studio setup. It's like, you know, it's like it really is having $1 million ideas on a $1 budget. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, what you want to do it's not that it's impossible. It's just that like for the quality that you want, and for the things that you're trying to do, and the consistency, and the amount of work is, it's not scary. It's just that, or it's not something that I can't do. It's something that is just that like, I know that in execution, it'll just come off as very poor and very cheap. And those aren't bad things. You know, everybody has to start somewhere. It's just that for me, I want it to be like really, really good. So, and with this podcast, it's also very cheap. You know, it's also very slow. I mean, if you look at my older videos on my YouTube channel of the Win Your Podcast YouTube channel, you can see me with just like a green screen behind me, and I just project some random thing behind me and talk about it. I'm wearing costumes and whatnot. It's just like, it's so ridiculous. It's so funny, but at the same time, starting this podcast kind of gave me confidence and gave me a boost of energy to like try social media, or to try like podcasting in general, or try doing a bunch of things that I didn't think I would be consistently doing at this, you know, over and over and over again. So to sit here and be able to post on Spotify, I started on Anchor. On Anchor, it was the Spotify kind of free podcast uploading service. It was called Anchor, and I remember it. And I remember they were making the transition to Spotify for podcasters, and I had reached I don't know if it was the follower goal, or I had reached some sort of monetization goal for Anchor, but Anchor was kind of dying out, and Spotify for podcasters was coming in. So it was kind of like this weird spot where I had reached the monetization goal, where I could like realistically put some ads in my on my episodes to see if they would make money. because the audience size had grown to the amount where it's like, all right, well, you have this many listeners, you know what I mean, or whatnot, whatever it was. And then they were just like, yeah, we're gonna take all that back, and they're like rebranding Anchor. They're turning into this new thing called Spotify for podcasters. And so I guess kind of the whole monetization thing went away, or it had to restart. I don't know exactly how it worked or how exactly I got, I lost to it, but I just remember the feeling of like I had achieved the like monetization goal per se, and then I was just like, oh, I guess I don't have it anymore because they were transitioning or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly. Or maybe it was just like I have to reach that goal monthly or weekly or something. Like I had to have a certain follower or listener count, and when I reach that listener count, then I can start putting ads in the video. I don't know. Because I imagine that the Spotify ads that they play during the episode, like, it's different than, I guess, brands coming to the podcast and saying, hey, promote us, and you physically talk about it in your podcast. Like you make a little cutscene and then you talk about the brand, and then we'll pay you X amount of dollars for the audience that you have, the reach that you have. And then as opposed to maybe with the Anchor deal or with Spotify for podcasters, if like I throw an ad in the middle of my podcast, it just isn't me talking to the audience. It's they'll cut the podcast at some time, and then an ad will be thrown in there, and then you have to sit through the ad or whatever, and then the podcast will come back. So I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I tried to monetize it. I tried on one video, on one episode, I tried to do it. I was like, monetize, let's see where this goes. And nothing really came from it. I don't think it's still monetized after they made the transition to Spotify for podcasters. I think all that went away. So new data, new rules. And I remember I would have multiple Spotify accounts. Like I would have one for my own personal song use. I would have one for the When Your Podcast. And then I think I made like another one just for fun or whatever. Or maybe it was for like a Spotify free trial. So then I, what's it called? Then Spotify for podcasters was like, hey, you have to sync up your Spotify to Spotify for podcasters in order to like have access to your account. So I was like, what does that mean? And they were basically it's basically I have to stay signed into the When Your Podcast account at all times. And if I switch from Spotify for podcasters to my account, essentially the way that it works is I won't have access to my Spotify for podcasters account. But it's not that crazy. It's like it's different for different devices, right? I upload on my computer, so I only have to stay signed in on my computer, and if I can switch out of my different accounts on my phone. So it's not a big deal, but at the time I was just like I was using my computer to like listen to to build up my Spotify Wrapped. You know what I'm talking about? Like in November, December, they released the Spotify Wrapped, and I was just using it to build up certain songs that I had on a playlist, and I wanted those songs to be played, and I wanted that to kind of build up towards my diverse, my super diverse, music taste, my music palette, and I really wanted to show it off. But at the end of it all, I was just kind of like not bummed out by it. I was just like, well, I don't really need the Spotify Wrapped to tell me how diverse my playlist is. And I was just kind of like, I'd rather, now I think it's a lot more funny to like focus my Spotify on one artist. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, statistically that's not possible because I listen to so many. But to focus it on maybe like one artist, and then from there, like just make it all about that one song or that one artist, or make it like, you know what I mean? And I think it's funny because I don't, what's it called? Nobody really can post on Spotify Wrapped Christmas music, because Christmas music is usually saved for November, December, and that's when the Spotify Wrapped comes out. So it's like Christmas music kind of gets, they kind of get thrown under the bus. It's like you don't get to see them like flourish throughout the year, right? It's from January to October, you don't really get to see the Christmas music sort of bloom and grow to this great extent, right? But for me, I was like, I'm gonna do exactly that. I'm gonna find like a song or like good Christmas music that I like. That is like, I'm gonna just continuously push and make it like this, so that way when Spotify Rap comes around, I can be like, yo, I stay listening to Christmas music. Like everybody else is fake Christmas listeners. You know what I mean? I listen to the Christmas music year round. I got Christmas in my heart year round. So that's kind of like that's the joke I'm trying to pull now. And those are the kind of funny things that I think about trying to do with Spotify. But long story short, the transition from Anchor to Spotify for podcasters it's been pretty cool. I mean, it's easy. They always like message me about RSVPing for some meeting, like group meeting, some podcast meeting, like here's how to grow your podcast even more. And probably should listen to them, but then at the same time I was just kind of like, I mean, I guess building up a following is, through a podcast is difficult on its own, with or without, your marketing or your strategic things in it. So I don't really know where I fit in it. And at the time, they kept on messaging me like RSVP for the meeting, for like this group meeting and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, I'll RSVP. I should at least see what's out there, right? Let me see it. And then they'll schedule it at like some early time and then I'll sleep through it. Or like they'll schedule it at a time when like I'm literally doing something and I was like, oh, I forgot to add that thing. So I don't know. I don't know what to really say about that, but in the grand scheme of podcasting, in the grand scheme of life in general, it's like I'm so, you feel so small. You feel like, well, if I put this out there, then everybody's going to make fun of me. Everybody's going to laugh at me. Nobody's going to really take me seriously. Everybody's going to like make fun of me and I'm going to be like a loser and all this other stuff. But at the same time, I was just kind of thinking to myself, like, who cares? Like, you're already got nothing. Like, you got nothing to really lose. All you can do is just keep on trying. And then when you make it, then you can kind of be like, yeah, they were embarrassing. Yeah, they weren't the best. Yeah, the episodes were not that good. Yeah, the episodes were kind of terrible. Yeah, I don't know what I was talking about there. Yeah, I just kind of regurgitated the plot of the movie and I didn't really say all that much about it. But then at the same time, I'm just like, but now I'm different. Now I'm better. You can't, judge me for in general, but it's like you can't be upset about me then. You know what I mean? You should have attacked me then. This is the me now, and I'm better than I was back then. Now I don't just regurgitate the plot. Now I don't just talk about nonsense, even though I still do. But all I'm trying to say is that like the consistency and the trying is the best part of it all. And what I really like now is just doing this podcast consistently, Now that I made it to 200 episodes, I'm like, let's get to 300. Now let's get to 4, you know what I mean? It's just like over and over again. And then the more and more episodes that I do, the more and more times that I go through it, the better and better I get at speaking and at, coming up with ways to talk about things on the fly. Because for the most part, when I was starting, I had like a script. I had like a talking points that I would go through. And I mean, not a script per se. It was just like, I have to talk about this or I have to talk about that. And if you look at my older When Your Podcast YouTube videos, you can see my eye looking over to the side. And that's where I would have like a notebook, like I have a small notebook. And I would have it open and it would literally write like, and I would just write bullet points of like, okay, now talk about this for like 5 minutes, or talk about this for 2 minutes, and then talk about this for 3. You know what I mean? So it's just like all the way down the podcast. And I would get so self-conscious because when I would look back at the footage, you could definitely see my eyes or like me kind of being like, and then looking over to the side and then seeing my next talking point. And I was just, and that's kind of one of the reasons I stopped recording myself talking or like doing it. I just didn't like the quote unquote pressure of the camera. You know what I mean? I was just like, I don't really think that you were getting all that much without the camera, right? Like, obviously you were seeing my face and me speak, but at the same time, I was just like, if you're listening to a podcast, I imagine you're like driving, or maybe you're doing like folding your laundry, or like doing chores, or doing something that's like, doesn't require the sit down of it. You know what I mean? And it's just compared to other people's podcasts, or people who, have like real studios and real sets and like actual guests on their podcast. It's like, oh yeah, it makes sense that they would have a visual image of it. Like, of course they would do that. You know what I mean? That makes complete sense. But for me, somebody who's just getting started, it's like, I feel like it's more, it aligns more to like focus on the audio and just like the episodic nature and routine of like putting out an episode, and then eventually over time, as you build and you grow and you get better and better and better, then you can add the fancy stuff like the set and the neon lights of the podcast name behind you and stuff. Like, that's something that I think is cool and is like, okay, that's worth being recorded and that's worth being seen, and you can kind of see me laughing on my own jokes or talking about stuff. So I don't know, I just didn't feel the need to do that, and I don't really feel the need to do that still, just mainly because it wouldn't be all that visually impressive like others. So it's mostly just me talking for now, and hopefully if you're driving, that doesn't bother you, and I won't really show, or anything that I kind of say will more or less be described to you, huh? I guess that's the reason for it. But anyways, 2 years of this podcast. I mean, where else did I go wrong? Okay, so there's this dumb thing that happened this year, okay? So I remember I released Christmas commentary videos, or episodes, okay? So the way that those work, where I was supposed to sync up the Christmas movie or whatever, and then I talk over it, right? So this year, okay, it was January 4th, I was uploading a video, and I went on my Spotify for podcasters, and I realized, oh, I hadn't numbered my videos, because I was looking at the number count, and I was like, wow, it's a really high number, I'm proud of myself, but at the same time, I was like, you know what, maybe I should go back and I should number the episodes, just because, right? Like, let me go back and number the episodes, and let me start from there. So then I went all the way to the first episode, and I was like, I was thinking about numbering, like episode 1, episode 2, and like all the way up. But then I was like, maybe I should start with like an older episode first, so that way if something goes wrong, with it, then I can just like take it away. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the difference between cutting your hair at the root or cutting your hair at the top, right? It's like you can cut a little bit or you can cut all of it. And it's like, if I was going to make a mistake on the first episode, then it's like the whole thing would be out of order and out of whack. But if I messed up on the last episode, then it'll all balance out. So I did the episode thing, but I did it on one of the Christmas commentary episodes, or one of the earlier episodes, okay? So here's the problem. I went to go put a number on the episode, and instead of it staying where I published it, right? Because you can go to my YouTube channel and you can see like the publishing, or the day that I really uploaded it, and you can visibly tell that it was like that Thursday or Saturday or whatever, right? Like that holiday time frame. And you can look at it and you could be like, oh, this is when he would have uploaded it, okay? But when I tried to do it a number to a certain episode, and I forget which one it is, it like republished it. So it's January, all right? I maybe uploaded the Christmas commentary episode like in December something, like December whatever, like December 20th, let's just say, or December 17th or 18th, right? Then it's like, then looking at the episode, you're just kind of like, oh, snap. How is it now all of a sudden on January 4th that the Christmas episode got uploaded. It's like, no, that's not what happened. I just tried to add an episode number to it, and all of a sudden it just jumped ahead weeks. Like, it jumped over other episodes, and it was just like, what's going on? And I tried to refix it. I tried to get it back, and it was just like, oh my goodness. It just felt like now I have a Christmas commentary episode up on January 4th, and I was like, how did that even, I don't even know how that happened. I thought I'd just put like a number on it, and then I just clicked the save button, and then it just makes the number, episode 128 or whatever. And instead it just became like a whole new thing. It just got re-uploaded, and it threw the whole episode thing out of whack, and I got really upset about it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, now if people scroll down through my podcast, they'll see that, like, why is the Christmas episode uploaded on January 4th? Like, that's so weird. Like, that's like, why'd he do that? It's like, I didn't mean to do it. It was just an accident. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, so if you scroll through my Spotify podcast, if you scroll through the When You're podcast, you're going to see When You're watching some Christmas movie, and it's going to be on January, and you're going to be like, yeah, that doesn't really fit there. And I was just like, I know. And there was nothing I could do to like get it back. The only way I could like put it back into place would be deleting the episodes that came after it. So I had released a New Year's Eve episode and a New Year's Day episode or something like that, and that would be deleted to put it back in the correct order, but it still would be uploaded on like January 4th. And then I didn't have the I could have downloaded those episodes I would have deleted, but then they wouldn't fit in the time that they were supposed to. So the New Year's Eve episode wouldn't be on December 31st. It would now be on January 4th or January 5th or whatever. And then the same goes for the New Year's Day episode. It just wouldn't fit. And in the end, I was just like, all right, I'll take the L and tell my audience now, you know what I mean? A couple months later, about my dumb mistakes. But, these things happen, and it sucks, and it doesn't fit the continuity of the podcast, but hopefully in my explanation of it now, you'll be able to understand, like, oh snap, like, okay, so it was an accident, you know what I mean? So who knows, who cares? So yeah, simple mistakes like that. And then I chose to do 2 episodes a week because the idea of uploading like one hour podcast episode a week was kind of like the standard. Like, okay, I'm going to make a podcast every week. We'll start with like an hour long podcast, and that'll be like for the whole week, 1 hour long. And I was like, I don't, 1 hour is a lot of time. And I was like, maybe somewhere in like the 30 to 45 minute range. And so I was like, 45 minutes should be like a pretty good chunk of time to listen to something long enough, but shorter than an hour. So that way it's like, it feels like you get through the episode a lot more quicker. So that was the idea, is like, I'm going to release a 45-minute episode to 30 to 45-minute episode, and then I'm going to release a 20 to 25-minute episode, like a shorter form podcast, talking about a movie or a TV show that I watched and kind of like breaking it down, or saying like, I like this part and I didn't like this part, or the acting was so bad here, or the acting was really good here, and they have this scene together, right? And it's just kind of like that kind of episode of the podcast. That way it's like you still get like an hour long of content, but you get two different forms of content, essentially. So it's like, if you don't like me talking about whatever I talked about on Thursday, then on Saturday you can get the consistency of me talking about a movie or a TV show that just came out, or that is coming out, or that has been out, you know what I mean? And if you maybe like longer formed thoughts and ideas, like my own thoughts and ideas, like in longer form, then you get like 30 to 45 minutes of that, weekly. And so I was just like, that felt good to me, because I was like, that way you get 2 different types of content within the same hour long frame. So if like as soon as you finish the last episode, you go immediately to the next episode and it's like an hour long, give or take, more or less, right? Some episodes have been shorter. And I don't know if they can necessarily be called podcasts, right? Like such short, like 15-minute episodes can a 15-minute podcast really be considered a podcast, or is that just like a random talking point? But for me, I was just like, you know what? A podcast can be as short or as long as it wants, as long as it's, talking about something that they like, you know what I mean? It just doesn't have to be this crazy thing. It doesn't have to be this long thing. Like, it doesn't have to be a 3-hour podcast talking to like the best doctor in the world or whatever, you know what I mean? So for me, at least, I like podcasts that have like a good story to them, which is why I listen to Case Files. They do they're a true crime podcast, and they're one of the podcasts that I listen to from like the beginning. I'm just like, I have to see what they talk about, and you can see a difference in their earlier episodes to their episodes now. It's just like a lot more refined and a lot better, I guess, or maybe the audio quality, I don't know, but the subject's still there, and they release banger podcast episodes, so I really like listening to them, and there's some of my favorite podcast episodes on there. So yeah, those are kind of like my choices. And then I think I thought about doing like a true crime episode, but then I was kind of like, I don't know how I would do it. I would have to do like, I felt like I would have to get a bunch of facts and a bunch of information and whatnot. And it's not that I couldn't do it. It's just that like, I feel like talking about certain heavy subject matter isn't really my specialty, or it's like, I feel like I would just say something dumb, or I would make some dumb joke. And then it's like, no, these are real people getting affected. It's like, oh, it's not a movie that I can make fun of. You know what I mean? It's like you watch a horror movie, then you can make fun of somebody dying in the movie, or, an action movie, you can make fun of like the bad guy getting stabbed or falling in a weird way. But like in real life, it's just like, I feel like maybe I would unconsciously, or like, to avoid the seriousness of the content, I would make jokes at the expense of like real people and real families. And I was like, I didn't want to like attempt it, because I was like, I don't want to, make light of a situation that's actually really devastating for people. So I was like, maybe true crime just isn't something, I want it to be something I can talk about, but it's just that like something like, maybe I need to find the right format, or the right, what's it called? The right way to do it, quote unquote, to speak about it like that. And then, I don't know how far this podcast could go. I don't know how big it could get. Probably not at all. With 200 episodes of like basically poor audio quality and like me talking and rambling about nothing. But it's just that like having those 200 episodes, whether they're good or bad, it's just like I have them in my pocket of like, these are things that I've consistently been able to do, and something that I've been like, I can keep talking about over and over and over again. It's just like it's a way to push myself, and a persistence that just like goes to show that like, hey, you already did 200 episodes. What's another 100 more? You're capable of doing 200 episodes. You're capable of doing 100 episodes. You're capable of doing 50. You know what I mean? It's just like this constant inspiration, and this feeling of like, hey, you're able to do it. It's just that like, it may not be to the quality of your liking. It may not be at the visual, eye-opening and eye-catching thing, or the audio quality probably isn't as amazing as other people, or like, you could definitely do better, but it's just, for me, just about trying it. And then, in time, you'll probably see like a big difference. You know what I mean? You'll probably see like, I got a new microphone. Those changes can be quickly adapted, right? I can get a set, you know what I mean? And then what? And then now you can't be like, well, his other episodes is like, oh, I'm not on my other episodes anymore. I'm on this episode. And on this episode, I have a full set. I have a perfectly good microphone. I have multiple camera angles. Like I have like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not difficult it's not difficult to catch up in quality, but it is difficult to catch up in like execution. It's like I've been executing this podcast. I've been trying this podcast for over 200 episodes, and whether it's good or it's bad, you can't take away the effort. You can't take away the trying, the attempt, you know? So that's something that you have on your belt. And it's like people with better quality than mine, you know, a lot of them are out there, but they don't have as many episodes as I do. And maybe that's for better or for worse. You know what I mean? It's like they have less episodes, but they're a lot more, the quality of them is a lot greater. But then I have more episodes and maybe the quality isn't as great, but I talk about subjects or things that you like. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the differences. Or I have a way of speaking that's kind of funny, or maybe you like the way I talk. And I don't know, but 2 years of the Win Your podcast, still excited to do this, still excited to keep on trying it, and to keep on going with it. I really have no other words for it other than that. I like this podcast. I like podcasting as a format, you know what I mean? As opposed to, you know, maybe Instagram, or, you know, just being a part of the internet in like an audio way, I guess. You know, I don't know what the right term I'm trying to say is, but I like podcasting. So yeah, to anybody who has ever clicked on an episode of my podcast, who has ever listened to any episode of my podcast, to somebody who has seen it and thought maybe I'll come back to it, or scrolled past it, or maybe if you just thought to yourself like that podcast sucks, or if you click on it and you didn't like it, or you're just like, yeah, this podcast is weak, it's terrible. If you in any way, shape, or form came across, looked at, listened to, or felt like you understood like the gimmick of like the Win Your podcast, then I just want to say a big, big thank you to you. A huge thank you for listening to my podcast, for listening to anything that I have to say, whether it's a commentary episode, or a watching episode, or just me spouting nonsense. I just want to say a huge thank you. And, you know, my analytics aren't like in the millions or in the thousands or even in the hundreds, but it definitely is nice. It definitely feels good to have just 10 people listening, or 5 or 2 or 1 even. So I just want to say a big thank you if you listen to this podcast. And yeah, that's all I can really say. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys all next time. 2 years, baby. 2 years. Gonna get more excited for the third one, for the third year, the fourth, and the fifth. Just gonna keep on going. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.